change of the body. The head is 1/10 of the total body, not 1/7 anymore as it was in the classical period. What I'm trying to express is that art is forever changing. It's always in flux, always depending upon where it's being created in terms of location around the globe, the use of the art as a messaging device, and art has always been used as the visual newspapers of the culture where people are making art. It is meant to express values. It is meant to express stereotypes. It is meant to express the concept of life among people, the life of the individual. And so the art happens to be a reflection, a thought process that is translated into visual depictions of a people at a particular time in history, of a particular location in history, and even societies that continue and have longevity. They change during a period of a generation. They change in a decade. And so the art form from one society, from one civilization, is based on a continuum. It goes through different transformations. And if you look at Roman sculpture and mosaics, they got their influence from the Greeks, from the earlier civilization of the Greeks, but they create their own. And if you go into, if any of you have ever visited a cathedral in Paris or in England or even in New York, the Fifth Avenue Cathedral, you'll have these beautiful stained glasses. And what happens is that in each period, the emphasis on which material that is going to be used to explain the arts is significant, and it is reflective of the people at that time in terms of what materials, what art materials they're going to be using to express the story, the narrative of their society, of the culture, of the community. So the Greeks used marble. The Romans used also marble and mosaics. In the Christian architecture of cathedrals and of Christian art, they will use painting. They will use stained glass windows. They will create a style of religious architecture that represents the Catholic Church. And at some point, it transitions where you have the Protestant religion later on around the 16th century using their concept of what a religious structure should be, how to basically introduce and frame the scriptures of the Testament, well, the scriptures of Protestantism. And so what is significant that one should keep in mind is that materials change, the application of the materials change, how it's used, how it's applied, how it translates the needs of people, the society, the religion, the community. And what is significant is that you can go to a book and read art history, that you have all these different cultures and societies, but there is this long continuum. It's never stopping. It's always transforming and evolving. So that you might want to specialize in a chapter about possibly Romanesque or Gothic religious art, or going into the Impressionist period. And these are different periods, but they deal with and they specify and they recognize that these are different societies with a different vocabulary of different cultures that are trying to communicate. And again, what's significant is that if we use the baseline to translate what the definition is of art, it is based on human expression. And that is the bottom major point of what art is. What is something that we talk about, and I don't want to talk about it here, but there is an American cliche that says, art is in the eyes of the beholder. And that's a cliche. It basically means that one has the tendency to say, this I like and this I don't. So if you go into your art history book, you'll say, well, this is a wonderful representation of a society and a civilization. This I don't like. That's not the way it works, unfortunately. How it works in the arts is once you become familiar with what the intention is of the creating community, of the artists, of what the message is, what the story was at that time in a particular society, in a particular community, in a particular representation of a civilization, you start to understand that the arts has always had a significant role in its application to have people understand. So not everyone was literate. Not everyone read a book. Not everyone went to college. That's a modern phenomenon of our societies, that people have become educated over the past centuries. But earlier civilizations did not have that luxury of sending their children or going themselves to university. If they went to the cathedral or the church and they saw things that represented the birth of Christ, or images that dealt with the scriptures, that's the way they got their information. They learned it from mosaics. They learned it from sculptures. And another point that I want to make is that if you have an opportunity and go into the classical period of the Greek art, which is the 5th century BC, before Christ, you see a lot of the sculptures portrayed in the nude. And we have a value system that if there is nudity in a work, it is for few eyes. It is something that we tend to think is not correct. It's embarrassing. It is inappropriate. It is not meant to be seen. It is shoved away. But in Greek sculpture, in Roman sculpture, you had nudity as a part of the way in which the athlete was portrayed, the way people were seen in a museum. A sculpture standing in a village square was seen as nude. It wasn't pornographic. It wasn't negative. So again, the base point is that in society and societal transformation, the values of what are appropriate change. What are acceptable values and traditions? So that if you come to these presentations with an open mind, and you're open to learn about the variation of messaging that is in the arts, the variation of form and style and technique, you will learn so many things that can broaden your understanding and perspective and insight about what basically the role of the arts are in society. So I hope to see you next time. And I hope that Eric has a question for me before we sign off.